Tonight, actually, I have a very interesting Zod Hashem Dvar Torah that actually starts with a question. As a matter of fact, it's a question that somebody asked. But it's also connected to our parasha, and it's connected to last night's shiur. It's connected to a lot of things. B'siyata d'ishmaya, we'll try to do our best to keep the time to around an hour before we start taking your other questions. But B'ezrat Hashem, I think that once you hear some of the things, you may not even want to ask questions because you'll be dumbfounded at how extraordinary and endless our Torah is, Baruch Hashem, how everything is in it. As the Mishnah in Avot says, Afochba ve'afochba dekulaba. Delve into it and delve into it because everything is in it. So the question is, if somebody did something bad to me, am I allowed to hate him? Now, everyone knows the answer is no. You're not allowed to hate because we have a mitzvah in the Torah. It says that you have to love another Jew. You're not allowed to keep a grudge, and so on and so forth. But at the same token, we have a Gemara that says that if he specifically did something bad to you, such as take money, then you're allowed to hate him as long as he has not returned the money. So it's not exactly such a simple mitzvah. There's other details to it that we're going to get into. There's other details to it. Are we allowed to take revenge? Well, it all depends. What did you do? What did he do? And so on and so forth. So last night, in the shiur last night, we brought a chidush by the Chatam Sofer, who brings a Gemara in Masechet Nedarim, where the Gemara asks, how come the Torah scholars of that day, although they were scholars, their children were not scholars? Because normally you would assume that someone that's a scholar and dedicates their life to Torah, their children should also be scholars, but that wasn't the case. And the Gemara brings a rebuke on the sages of that day, those scholars of that day, and says that because they didn't bless the Torah. So then the Chatam Sofer says, what does it mean they didn't bless the Torah? They didn't do a blessing? No, it doesn't mean that. It means that they used the Torah, those sages in that time, used the Torah in order to beautify their own personal world, but not necessarily fulfill the Torah in order to sanctify Hashem's name, in order to do the Torah because it's the will of Hashem, because they misunderstood one of the statements in the Torah, which is that you have to love v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. You must love your brother like you love yourself, and this is the klal gadol b'Torah. This is a big teachings in the Torah. It's a big rule in the Torah, and they, in essence, like unfortunately many do today, have turned that into the entire Torah instead of a big rule in the Torah. And there's a very big difference between this being the entire Torah and this being a big rule in the Torah. We're going to get to the reason, B'ezrat Hashem, of why, what does it mean to be a big rule in the Torah. And because at the end of it all, the Gemara in Masechet Shabbat says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not create the world other than for the reason of us to fear Him. So in essence, telling us that if a person learns Torah, does mitzvot, and learns how to fear HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he has fulfilled his purpose. But if he doesn't, even if he knows the entire oral Torah and written Torah by heart, but he does not have fear of the Almighty, it's better off he didn't do anything. It's as if he did nothing. He'll get punished even for his Torah. Why? Because Yirat Hashem, Iotzaro. The fear of the Almighty, that's his treasure. So in essence, it tells us in many places, Gemara Masechet Shabbat, Masechet Avodah Zarah, and many other places, that the fear of the Almighty is the main treasure. It's the main purpose in the world, and there is no such thing as sanctifying Hashem's name without fearing Him first. And many people confuse this, but they say, wait a minute, but why should I fear when it sounds so scary when really I could go to a much nicer version that some other a Care Bear type of teacher is telling me that I should just love everybody, be a, lovey-dovey, kumbaya, whether you violate Shabbat and is intermarried and eats pig. That doesn't matter. I should love him anyway because he's a Jew. Shouldn't I just listen to that? It sounds much nicer. Torah says, no, you're not allowed to do such a thing. And the Care Bear Rabbi should also do tshuva with you because he's misteaching you, he's misunderstanding the Torah. And the Gemara says that the Chatam Sofer brings this chidush, and it's actually quoted in a few places by the Chatam Sofer, that this is the reason why the sages got punished at that time, because they misused the Torah and in essence used the Torah in such a way that it was just to beautify their own personal lives and not necessarily to sanctify Kadosh Baruch Hu's name. So even scholars, and we're not talking about the scholars that are the greatest sages in history, but certain scholars at that time can make mistakes. And many people do make these mistakes where they read something and they don't look at the entire teaching. They just look at one single statement and make a conclusion based on that single statement. And 9 out of 10 times you're going to arrive at the wrong conclusion because the Torah is a endless well where if you learn the different aspects of different things, you'll see that there's a lot more to everything. Nothing is concluded with a single statement. But with that being said, people have made the mistake in the past, even though when there were scholars. People are making that mistake in this generation, so much so that the wicked rabbi in Efrat, Riskin, that we talked about recently, that is creating all types of mamzerim in the world and all types of desecration of Hashem, his Talmid, Brandis, he just was quoted in an article where he's proud to announce his appointment of the new chief Orthodox rabbi of a certain shul in Efrat in Israel, a woman. She's religious. There's no question about her religiosity as far as whether she keeps Shabbat or not. But to say that a woman is going to be the chief rabbi, in so many words, of a synagogue, nothing like that has ever happened in the Orthodox world. Nothing ever like that will happen in the Orthodox world. And so, but we just quoted something. They're not Orthodox. They're Reform, but they like to call themselves Orthodox. Just like my dear friend from the Iguda Rabbanim told me, in the old days, it was very simple. If you were Reform, you called yourself Reform. If you were conservative, you called yourself conservative. If you were Orthodox, you call yourself Orthodox. Today, the Reform call themselves Orthodox, and the Orthodox call themselves Orthodox. So you have no idea what's going on until you see what people are doing, and it's unfortunate. But this whole expression of love to this woman that is leading now a keilah in Eretz Yisrael is a distortion of this very same thing that we talked about yesterday, which is to love everybody, and that's the whole Torah. It's not the whole Torah. It's a big rule in the Torah, but it's not the whole Torah. In fact, there's even a mitzvah to hate certain people, them specifically, because they're violating the Torah, but there's certain things you're not allowed to do. So this is some of the things we're going to go into today, Bezat Hashem, who you're allowed to hate, who you're obligated to hate even, who you're not allowed to hate, who you're obligated to love, and so on and so forth. And what does it really mean to love another Jew? What does it really mean? So, in this week's parasha, Rabotai, I'm going to give you a chidush that I don't believe anybody has heard before, at least not my audience, because I have only learned it recently. This week's parasha has mitzvot in it, has interesting things in regards to tum'ah, ta'ara, the purity, impurity, but then there's the famous story at the end of this week's Parashat Emor, which is the story of the blasphemer. The blasphemer who is known as a person that was the son of Shulamit. Shulamit is the woman that in Egypt was a very bubbly person, let's say flirtatious person, immodest person, and would say hello to everybody, including the Egyptians, and Kadosh Baruch Hu punished her that because she was immodest in that aspect, not immodest in clothes. There was virtually no immodesty among the Jews as far as clothing in those days. That's an invention of the last 100 years, but rather her attitude was immodest, which unfortunately a lot of women till this day are very immodest in their attitude, and they're hello to everybody, goodbye to everybody. They have guy friends. I'm just calling my friend. Who's your friend? Steve. You have a male friend? How does that work? No, it's a platonic relationship. Maybe an atomic relationship, not platonic. There is no platonic relationship, male or female. It's an atomic relationship. Either he's forbidden to speak to because he is obviously the opposite and he's interested in you, or will be interested in you, or you're interested in him, or he's interested in another him, which is another reason why you should not talk to such a person like that. But nonetheless, people do whatever they want, and they're always going to find some Care Bear rabbi to tell them that it's okay and it's allowed and it's even a mitzvah to do some type of sin that they're doing. But nonetheless, this Shulamit was a sinner in a sense that she was flirtatious, bubbly, and would say hello to everybody. One day, one of the Egyptians got a hello and thought that she was interested in him, and automatically that made that beast that he already was come out, and he ended up raping her. And when her husband found out and in essence walked in on the situation, he started beating her husband to a pulse, almost to the extent of killing him. And that's when Moshe Rabbeinu saw it. He saw the Egyptian beating the Jew. He also saw Beruach HaKodesh that what actually transpired, that it's really the Egyptian, as usual, being the evil one here, and he killed him. He killed the Egyptian. So now, from that act, many other things, many other fruits, although rotten fruits came out of that whole act. The whole issue of Datan ve'Aviram, which were the husband and the brother of Shulamit. They ended up fighting the next day. Moshe Rabbeinu rebuked them. They ended up going to Paro, who tried killing Moshe Rabbeinu after that. Moshe Rabbeinu fled Egypt for the next 60 years before coming back and rescuing Am Yisrael. So here we see the first evil deed of Datan ve'Aviram. Furthermore, a child is born out of that rape. That child is mentioned many weekly Torah portions later, an entire book later, in Parashat Emor, in Sefer Vayikra, this week's Parashat, in chapter 24, where it talks about how there was the son of the Israelite woman went out, and he was the son of the Egyptian man, and he went out among the children of Israel, and they quarreled in the camp. The son of the Israelite woman and the Israelite man, they quarreled, and he got upset that the Jewish people they did not accept him into the tribe of Dan, because although his mother was a tribe of Dan, the tribe is decided by the father, and since his father was an Egyptian, they did not accept him into any tribe because he was not part of any tribes. And he got into a quarrel with them. Some of the Mefarshim say that it got physical. And then they brought him to a Beit Din. They brought him to Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu tried the case, and that's why it says, and the son of the Israelite woman went out. What does it mean, went out? He went out of the Beit Din. He went out of the Beit Din of Moshe Rabbeinu after receiving the news that he is part of no tribe until Mashiach comes. Because he doesn't come from a Jewish father, even though he's a Jew, because his mom is a Jew, but he's not part of any tribe. This is the same thing with when it comes to converts. Converts are not part of any tribe. The Mashiach, Tzidkenu, when he comes, will decide which tribe everybody is in and tell us which tribe everybody else is in. But nonetheless, this person that came from an awful situation, l'avdil from converts that are righteous and convert for the right reason, The point is, this guy, he came out of the wrong place. He came out of the wrong place, and he, in essence, wasn't part of a tribe, and he went out of this bedin. He did not like the judgment. Did not feel like he's getting the love of a Jew that, in essence, he felt he's supposed to get, he's entitled to get, and therefore, he cursed HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name. They heard him, they arrested him, and then they waited for Moshe Rabbeinu to bring the judgment again from HaKadosh Baruch Hu of what to do with this person, and the final judgment was that the entire assembly will stone him to death. All of those that heard the blasphemy shall lean their head upon his head first, their hands on his head first, like almost like they do with the sacrifices. They push their heads down, and then the rest of them start stoning him after they throw him off the two-story building in a whole nightmarish situation. The reason why they put their hand on his head first before they stone him is because since this stoning is a result of justice of a bedin, in essence, each one of the people that heard the blasphemy itself and are the first ones to hit him, are the ones that in essence brought him to trial, they're leaning their hands on his head to say that your blood is in your head, and we will not be punished for your death because you caused this to yourself. You did it. We did the right thing. We're following the Torah. Your blood is on your hands. You're the one that caused yourself to death. We're not, even though we're throwing stones on you, this is a mitzvah what we're doing. So where's the love there? As a side note, the chidush that I want to give you that I don't believe you've ever heard before, and if you did, ashrechem, is that who is this person? Who is this person that got such treatment? Why did he deserve such a thing? Abutai? This is a extraordinary, and to keep you in suspense, we'll leave that as the final point for everything that we said. Now, first and foremost, are we allowed to hate a fellow Jew? Are we allowed to hate somebody? So there's no better place to go than for simple explanations, literal explanations, deep explanations, all in one. You go to the Sefer HaChinuch. Sefer HaChinuch, almost 800 years ago, lists each one of the 613 mitzvot with the source of it in the Torah, as well as different reasons behind it, above and beyond the simple fact of the reason for the entire Torah, which is it's Hashem's will, but different, what they call ta'amim, different tastes of why, different flavors of why this mitzvah is not only in the Torah, but it's to our favor, it's to for the sake of us, as living better lives. So mitzvah 238 says that in the Leviticus chapter 19, verse 17, last week's Parashat, Lo tisna et achicha bilvavecha. You shall not hate your brother in your heart. So the Chinuch says, this is specifically referring to secret hatred. Secret hatred as expressed by the sages of the Sifra, who say that Hashem specifically stated that this prohibition of hatred is regarding hatred that is kept in the heart. Hence the reason of why he said hatred in your heart. Now, this is secret hatred of another person, and it's also mentioned in Gemara, Masechet Arachin, page 16b. Now, the reality is that secret hatred doesn't actually mean that nobody knows, like you would normally think, but rather secret hatred means that the person you hate doesn't know. Which means that even if you have told other people that you hate this person, but he himself doesn't know, it's still considered secret hatred. And you're still violating the Torah by hating this person because he doesn't know. What are you supposed to do? You're supposed to tell him, listen, you did this, and this for me. I hate you because of it. And give him an opportunity to explain himself and apologize, perhaps. So, the hated person, if he knows that you hate him, then it's called open hatred. If he doesn't know, then it's called secret hatred. If it's secret hatred because he doesn't know, that's this specific sin that we're talking about. If he does know, then it's actually multiple sins. What sins are those? It's, first of all, it's you don't love another Jew like you're supposed to. Second of all, you have a sin of bearing a grudge against another Jew, which is the open hatred. And number 3, you're taking revenge. So we're going to go over all of these, B'ezrat Hashem. So, first and foremost, let's see. When a person exhibits open hatred towards his fellow Jew, and thereby that person is aware that he hates him, he doesn't transgress this mitzvah prohibition, but rather he transgresses the mitzvah prohibition of you shouldn't take revenge, like we said. Now, even if a person is transgressing by openly hating another person, the hatred that's in the heart, the secret hatred, is much worse than open hatred. And in fact, it's the worst hatred of all, so much so that it's regarded as one of the most repulsive trait in the eyes of any intelligent person, the Chinuch says. Because the hatred of the heart causes the greatest evil between people. Now, where do you apply this hatred of another person? When is it a sin? When is it not a sin? Rule of thumb. The Chinuch says, a person that's transgressing this mitzvah and harbors hatred in his heart, it's only a transgression if it's hatred of an upright Jew. And it says that this mitzvah is in regards to your achicha, your brother in mitzvot. Meaning, if this fellow person, if this other person is a desecrating of the Torah, he desecrates Shabbat, doesn't keep Shabbat, he's intermarried, he is known to be a criminal, not only are you not sinning by hating him, but in fact, it's a mitzvah sometimes to hate that person. As the Gemara in Masechet Pesachim, page 113b, and also the Rambam in Ilchot Rotzeach, chapter 13, halacha number 14, says that the prohibition against hating a person's brother, as well as the obligation to love one's fellow, applies to a person's brother and fellow in observance of mitzvot, which is somebody that's pursuing the Torah. But someone that's pursuing wickedness and is willfully desecrating the Torah, desecrating Shabbat and things of that nature, one is permitted to hate such a person openly or in secret, but you have to make sure that hatred is the hatred of that person's sinful ways and not him personally. Not him personally. That's where a lot of people make a mistake when it comes to rebuking and so on. They start hating people specifically. That's a mistake. You're not supposed to hate the person specifically, start making fun of his looks and things of that nature. That's wrong. You're hating the sin specifically, and you're hating him because of that sin. That's the key that's important. Now, there's no prohibition whatsoever involved in hatred against evildoers, against people that are wicked, the Chinuch says. Rather, it's a mitzvah to hate them. After you have rebuked them many times regarding their sins, and yet they refuse to do tshuva from their evil ways. It's a mitzvah to hate them at this point, as it says in Psalm 139, verse 21, Alo misanecha Hashem esna, for indeed those who hate you, Hashem, I hate them. And those who rise up against you, I quarrel. So, Here's a source in regards to brief explanation of the mitzvah of hatred. What about, but it says you have to rebuke them first. You can't just hate somebody just because you saw him driving on Shabbat. At the very least, you have to tell the guy, listen, you're a Jew. Jews are not allowed to drive on Shabbat. If you're a Gentile, you're allowed to drive on Shabbat. If you are an elephant, you're allowed to drive on Shabbat. If you're a monkey, you're allowed to drive on Shabbat. But if you're a Jew, not allowed to drive on Shabbat. Simple. He doesn't understand, continues to drive on Shabbat. Next time you tell him, listen, I told you not to drive on Shabbat, but maybe I guess I got to give you some sources. Let me show you something. And you show the guy a video, you show him something in a book, and so on and so forth. Explain to the guy, now to drive on Shabbat. And you do this multiple times, and the guy simply just ignores everything that you're saying, and in fact laughs at you in your face. That's a person that you've already rebuked. You've showed him, and he continues to ignore everything, cares less, continues to drive on Shabbat, continues to desecrate Hashem's name. Mitzvah to hate such a person. Now, what about the obligation to rebuke? How do we know this? We're commanded, the mitzvah number 239 says that we're commanded to rebuke a fellow Jew who has not conducted himself properly, whether it's regarding matters between man and his fellow, which is personal matters, or it's matters between man and God, which is the observance of the Torah and mitzvot. As it's stated, and also same exact place, Leviticus 19:17, which is, Ocheach tochech et amitecha. You must rebuke your fellow. Now, how do we know, the Chinuch says, how do we know that we have to rebuke a person more than one time? How do we know? We learn this from the verse itself. The sages of the Sifra say, the actual verse itself says, you must rebuke your fellow. Why does it say why doesn't it just say, rebuke your fellow? Why does it say you must rebuke your fellow? To show us that even if you have already reproved your fellow Jew regarding a sin 4 or 5 times, and he still did not do tshuva, you are obligated to reprove him yet again. And the Torah teaches us that you surely reprove him to such an extent. The Gemara, Masechet Bava Metzia, page 31a, says, Afilu mea pe'amim. You shall reprove him even if it's 100 times. Even if 100 times are necessary to get him to do tshuva. Now, what about private rebuke, public rebuke? When do we do this? When do we rebuke him publicly? People think that if they see somebody post a picture of, let's say, something immodest on the internet, you're allowed to publicly rebuke him. On the other hand, if somebody cheated you in business, you're allowed to publicly rebuke him. Do a protest outside of his office, or like some of these people are doing, protest with the agunot. They go outside protesting to embarrass the guy because he's sinning and so on and so forth. Are you allowed to do such things? If somebody stole money from you, are you allowed to publicly insult this person and rebuke him because technically he stole from you, cheated you, and so on and so forth? You caught your loved one cheating on you. Are you allowed to publicly disseminate this to the whole world? She's a liar, she's a cheater, he's a liar, he's a cheater, he's a adulterer, he's a garbage. Are you allowed to do all these things? Technically you're saying, listen, he's doing something wrong, I'm rebuking him. What's the problem with it? It's very important to know. The very same place that says you must rebuke your brother, your fellow, says Velo tisa alav chet, but don't let it bring you to a sin. Meaning, don't do it in the wrong way. What's the wrong way? This teaches us that when first setting out to rebuke a sinner, it's proper for a person to rebuke the sinner in private, using a soft language, gentle words, so that the sinner will not become embarrassed. However, there's no doubt that if there's no doubt that the sinner is not repenting of the sins as a result of this more discreet manner, we may then humiliate the sinner publicly, publicizing his sins, degrading him for it, until he returns to the good path and repents. Don't conclude anything yet. This is, again, like I said, brief first few words. If you rebuked him 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however many times, doesn't do tshuva, here he's telling us you can go public with it. But is it really that simple? No. You have to pay attention to the words, and we're going to get to that in a moment. One of the purposes of the mitzvah of rebuking, Rabotai Yekarim, is actually to bring peace. It's to bring peace. This is confronting another Jew. That is to express your disapproval of his behavior, is how we bring peace between people. Because when a person sins against another person, the wrong party gently reprimands the wrongdoer in private. The wrongdoer will normally apologize. And then you would accept the apology and will make peace with him. But if the wrong party does not reprimand the wrongdoer, he will inevitably harbor this hatred towards him in the heart. And he will come to harm him soon after or later. As we saw from the story of Avshalom and his brother Amnon, where Avshalom hated his brother Amnon because he raped his sister, but he never told him anything about it, and he waited for him a few years until he ended up killing him. So we see here that rebuke is one of the ways that we actually solve a lot of the bigger crimes that ever happened to our nation before they happen, because instead of keeping it in your heart and eventually taking revenge when you get that chance, you tell the guy, you did this wrong to me. That's it. You give the guy a chance to say I'm sorry or explain himself. Maybe he's actually right, and so on and so forth. Once you do it, that's how you bring peace to Am Yisrael. If you don't do it, you'll definitely end up hating the guy, and you'll end up violating that mitzvah that we already talked about. So that's why all the ways of the Torah, when I say that Darkei Torah, Darkei Noam, that all of the ways of the Torah are the ways of pleasantness, that's in essence what it means. It doesn't mean that you just talk nice to everybody all the time, regardless of what they do, but rather everything, even the things that seem harsh, are going to bring pleasantness to the world, even if it is a rebuke. Now, among the laws of this mitzvah there's an obligation of the mitzvah of rebuking a fellow Jew applies until the point of this person striking you, meaning that person has the obligation to rebuke over and over again until he's either threatened, and some say actually the other person hits him. But if this person is a violent person, where you know that if you rebuke him, he could surely put your life at risk, then you have no obligation to rebuke that person whatsoever. There's a time that it's a mitzvah to rebuke, there's a time that it's not a mitzvah to rebuke. Now, nevertheless, the chinuch says, every person of conscience ought to reflect and be very diligent regarding these matters. He should consider and determine whether there could be a benefit to his words to the sinner after he rebukes him. For if there's even a possibility that the sinner will listen to his words, he's therefore obligated to rebuke him. And in the case he's scared, or she's scared that this sinner might physically harm them, they should have emunah in Hashem, and He will assist them in battling their enemies, and have their you should not have their heart be scared in any way, because Hashem protects those that love Him and destroys all of the people that are wicked. And if he succeeds, he'll be blessed accordingly, as Shlomo Melech says, 310 worlds for every person you help him do tshuva. On the other hand, whoever has within their power the ability to rebuke another person and cause another person to do tshuva by protesting against their sinful actions, and does not do it, the Torah tells us that such a person is then themselves held responsible for that sinner's misdeeds. Meaning, you see this person is violating Shabbat, you have the ability to rebuke him, and you choose not to. Every week you see him driving on Shabbat, you never say a single thing. Perhaps you're the rabbi of the community, or you're the president, or you're just simply a known member of the community, and you know these people are driving on Shabbat, and nobody's saying anything. You continue staying quiet, you are also going to be judged as a mechalel Shabbat. Why? You have access to those people. You go to the same shul with them for a few years already. You still see them drive on Shabbat, you don't say anything? and Shamayim they'll count you as a Mechalel Shabbat. This is why it is not worth it to go to a shul that has a large portion of the people desecrating Shabbat. Why? Because even if you have a kosher minyan, let's say you have 10, 20 people that keep Shabbat, but you have 80 people that drive on Shabbat, and the rabbi, he is, he's a banker, he's a businessman. He doesn't care about rebuking people. He cares about, taking their money. So he doesn't say a single thing. And you're sitting in that kehillah praying, and you know that 80% of the kehillah, 50% of the kehillah is driving on Shabbat, driving on Yom Kippur, does all the sins in the world, and no one is saying a single thing, and you see them year after year, nothing changes. You staying quiet is a very, very big mistake. Why? Either leave the community, go somewhere else that has more religious people, or start crying foul, saying, listen, Rabotai, I'm telling you, because the rabbi doesn't want to do it, I'm telling you, not allowed to drive on Shabbat. Or give him a CD, or send him one of our lectures, or tell the rabbi, you have to do a shiur about Shabbat. At least they'll hear it for the first time in their life. If they choose to continue desecrating Shabbat, okay, at the very least they heard it. But to completely stay nonchalant about it, Rabotai, unfortunately the Chinuch says, and many other places in the Gemara, Masechet Shabbat, page 54, and also in the Masechet Avodah Zarah, and also the Rambam, and many of the poskim say, you see other people sinning and you stay quiet, you in essence become a partner to the sin. So much so, Rabotai, this mitzvah is so important to rebuke people, so much so that even someone that's of lesser stature has the obligation to rebuke somebody that's a higher stature, meaning you're just a regular member of the community, and the president of the community is a desecrator of Shabbat, you have to rebuke him. If he desecrates Shabbat, you have to rebuke him. This actually happened many years ago. One of the greatest rabbis that of recent generations in the Syrian community, Rav Tzion Levi, Alav Shalom, was Kodesh Kodashim, was a very dear friend of Rav Ovadia. He built an empire of Kedusha in Panama. But it didn't start off that way. When he came to Panama first, he was very young Avrech. They came, they asked him, come be the Kehillah. They wanted to build the Jewish community even further, and they brought a Talmid Chacham from Eretz Yisrael. Rav Ovadia went to Egypt, Rav Tzion Levi went to Panama, Rav Tzion Abba Shaul was in Israel, one of the other Chavut, I think Rav Baruch went to Brooklyn. So these Chachamim, each one went to different places to spread the Torah and build communities. So Rav Tzion Levi was fire of zealousness, and he didn't take no for an answer. But it didn't start off that way. Right off the bat, he would read off the Torah on Shabbat and so on, and the president of the community, president of the shul, the one that's the richest, was a Mechalel Shabbat, and but still wanted to get an aliyah to the Torah. And he brought himself up to the Torah on Shabbat. I'm gonna have an aliyah on Torah. Rav Tzion Levi says to him, no, you're not gonna have an aliyah. What do you mean? I'm the president for all these years. What do you mean? No, you're not gonna have an aliyah. As long as I'm here, you're not gonna have an aliyah. You violate Shabbat, you're not gonna have an aliyah. He says, you know who I am? He says, I listen to Hashem. He says, if you don't give me an aliyah, you know what I'm going to do to you? He says, how about this? Not only you're not going to get an aliyah, but as long as you're sitting in here, I'm not going to read from the Torah at all. The guy didn't know where to bury himself from the embarrassment and the anger that he had. The whole kehillah is shaking. Who is this young little avrech think he is talking to the president of the community like this? Not going to read from the Torah as long as he's here. From the anger, the president walked out, and Rav Tzion Levi continued reading from the Torah. After he finished the prayer, went home and told his wife, after Shabbat, we should pack our bags because this is probably the end. We're going to fire him. Motzei Shabbat came, Avdalah, everything. And they started packing. Suddenly they hear a knock on the wall, on the door. Open the door, sees all of the head people of the community are there. The entire community showed up to his house, to the rabbi's house, with the president in front. He's thinking they're gonna lynch him. He's in a foreign country, in Panama. It's not like he's got anywhere to go. But as you would have it, because the Torah promises us, is those that fear Hashem, dvarav nishma'im, their words will be heard. The president and the entire Keilah came to Rav Zion Levi and says, Kvod Harav, I came here to say, I'm sorry. You are right. From now on, whatever you say, that's what we're going to do. And that's how Rav Zion Levi built an empire of Kedusha. An empire of Kedusha in the Syrian community that impacted it all over the world, not just there. Started that way. Why? He stood up for the Emet when it didn't make sense to anybody. Didn't make sense to anybody. So, Rabotai, even someone that's in a low level has this obligation. A woman, a man has this obligation. And a person that does not fulfill this mitzvah has violated the mitzvah obligation and is considered among the Reshaim. Person that does not rebuke people in some way or another, directly rebuking them or indirectly rebuking them. You don't have to always talk to people. You could just simply share a lecture with them that talks about their sins. You see that they're desecrating Shabbat, you see that they're intermarried, you see that they're eating non-kosher. Find a lecture from a fiery speaker that wakes up people that are spiritually dead. Send it to them. Give it to them on a regular basis. Do your best to help them. That's a rebuke. Invite them to a lecture. That's a rebuke. Get them to at least find out what the emet is. But staying quiet makes the person that's not rebuking, the chinuch says, among the reshaim. Mikat areshaim sheosim ken. Think that you keep Shabbat, that's enough. You think that because you give tzedakah, it's enough. It's not enough. Why? We're obligated. Obligated. So what about embarrassing them? Okay, the guy desecrates Shabbat, I can embarrass him. Rabotai, here, this is a very, very important part of the teaching. Because we know that once a person, the mitzvah number 240, prohibition of embarrassing a fellow Jew. From here we learn that a person that malbim pnei chavero berabim en lo chelek le'olam haba, a person that publicly embarrasses another Jew and has no share of the world to come. But you just said you're allowed to publicly embarrass. When are you allowed to publicly embarrass again? After you rebuke once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 10 times, when are you allowed to go public with this? Listen to this, it's a very, very important teaching. The Chinuch says in Mitzvah 240, in regards to the laws of embarrassing a fellow Jew in public, that the sages of blessed memory say that we were not warned against humiliating a fellow Jew in all situations of rebuke. Rather, only when the rebuke pertains to matters that are between a man and his fellow, meaning there's personal grievances, for which a person reprimands another person who has wronged him personally. When attempting this type of rebuke, one must be careful never to humiliate another person in public, even after confronting him in private to no avail. However, regarding heavenly matters, that is, that rebuking a sinner for being a derelict when it comes to mitzvot, desecrate Shabbat, and so on and so forth, if the sinner does not do tshuva as a result of the rebuke initially attempted in private, it is a mitzvah to embarrass him in public and to publicize his sin and to disgrace him and condemn him until he returns to the path of good, as was the practice of the prophets towards the sinners of Am Yisrael. Here, Rabotai, is the key secret. When are we allowed to publicly embarrass people? When are we forbidden from embarrassing people? If it is an issue between one person and another, he wronged you, you wronged him, it's never allowed to go in public. Never. There's no amount of times. Never allowed to go public. All of these people that are doing public protest about somebody that wronged them, stole from them, and so on, it's not a good idea. Why? Even though you have been wronged, you are now doing even more wrong than them. You're doing even more wrong than them. Personal issues stays private even after 100 personal rebukes. But when it comes to desecration of the Torah, desecration of Hashem's name, even after a single rebuke, you see that he's simply ignoring you, you are allowed to go public. And in fact, it's a mitzvah to go public and embarrass him in public. That's why the Shulchan Aruch says, someone that speaks during the prayer in shul, you're rebuking in private, now doesn't listen to you, mitzvah to publicly embarrass him in front of everybody. Disgrace him, insult him, and so on, until he gets to the point, stops talking in shul. Why? This is too big of a sin, the Shulchan Aruch says. Why is it too big of a sin? Everybody in the Kehillah's prayers are being put on hold because this guy is talking in shul. So therefore, it's too big of a sin for him to even pay for. You have to shake the ground. But that's because this is not one person to another type of sin. This is a desecration of Torah. It's Chilul Hashem. When you talk in shul, it's Chilul Hashem. So that's, Rabotai, why you're allowed to publicly embarrass such a person. Now what about taking revenge? This guy did something to you. You're allowed to take revenge? Mitzvah number 241, also based on the verse Leviticus 19:18. Lo tikom v'lo titor et bnei amecha. You shall not take revenge, and you shall not bear a grudge against the members of your people. Where in essence, this is the Chinuch says, this is a case one is not a person does not have to actually do something openly, actively, in order to be one that's taking revenge. Why? It's just like, it gives the example, if somebody came to you and said, listen, can I borrow you came to a person and said, can I borrow a hammer? And he says, no. And you know he has 3 hammers in the house. No, I don't have. Okay, next day he comes to you. He says, can I borrow a knife? And you say, no. That's revenge. Yeah, but he did it to me. So what if he did it to you? Just because he's a Rasha doesn't mean you're allowed to be a Rasha. Even more so, Rabotai, if a person says, listen, I'll give you my knife, but that's because I don't do what you did. Even though you didn't give me the hammer, even though you had 3 of them, I'm still going to give you my knife. Guess what? It's not a mitzvah, you have just made a sin of holding a grudge. Now what about the guy that got embarrassed? He talked bad about you while you were gone, you went down, you went out of town. By the time you came back, there was posters all over the street that you are like the worst person on planet Earth. And you didn't do any of this stuff. Are you allowed to keep a grudge against this guy? I mean, technically he did bad to you, right? Torah says not allowed to take revenge, not allowed to keep a grudge. Why? Chinuch gives the explanation of a lifetime. It was worth it to come to the world just to listen to this part. The purpose of this mitzvah, the Chinuch says, is the person must know intellectually that instead of focusing on taking revenge and how come he did this to me and how come she did this to me and how could she say this and how could he say this and so on and so forth. Instead, they should use the Torah as a tool to remind them to internalize what's happening in their life at that moment when they're being embarrassed or they were hurt by somebody. Internalize this into their consciousness, the idea that everything that is happening to them, whether it's good or it's bad, is orchestrated specifically by a Kadosh Baruch Hu himself. And it's not from the person. It is brought to you by Hashem himself, may his name be blessed, where he's simply using the hands of man to do his will. Everything is the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This guy was simply used to bring you embarrassment that HaKadosh Baruch Hu signed off on. So therefore, when a person causes you pain and suffering, you must realize that it's your own sins that caused the suffering. And Hashem, may His name be blessed, decreed this injury or suffering upon you because of that. And you must not focus your thoughts upon exacting revenge against the person that harmed you, since that person is not really the true cause of your suffering. He's simply a tool that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is using. Your sins are the cause. You are the cause of your suffering, not him. And a person should instead focus his thoughts and his feelings on doing tshuva, just like David HaMelech that was cursed by Shimi ben Gera in front of all of his people. It says in the book of Samuel 2, chapter 16, verse 11, leave him and let him curse, for Hashem, blessed be He, has told him to. That David HaMelech blamed the matter on his own sin rather than on the antagonist Shimi ben Gera. And a person should simply take this into account, that all of the suffering that you have, that you think that she caused you and he caused you caused you to yourself. There's no reason for you to be mad at these people. Now, surely they'll be punished for whatever they're doing and why Hashem used them as a tool to hurt another person. But nonetheless, you shouldn't be mad at them at all. There's no reason for you to take revenge. Why? You are the reason. You are doing something for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to bring you this something as a result. If you did good, you would have gone good. If you did bad, you're getting bad. Simple. Simple. Furthermore, there's a great benefit to be found in the fulfillment of this mitzvah, the Chinuch says, whereas it serves to put a stop to all fighting and to wipe away all enmity in people's hearts, for ultimately it'll bring peace to Am Yisrael. Why? Because once you know that all bad that happens to you, that's coming from the mouth and actions of other people, is your fault and not theirs, they're just being used as tools. You can't fight the hammer for hitting you in the head. It's a hammer. You can't be upset at the shark for biting you. It's a shark. That's what they do. You have to be upset at yourself. How come I got myself to this point? Therefore, once you understand it's not their fault, but rather your fault, there's nothing to take revenge over. There's nothing to be vengeful about. And the reality is, Rabotai, that if a person violates this mitzvah and continues to bear a grudge against his fellow Jew, again, always remember, fellow Jew, person that keeps mitzvot, not a wicked person that desecrates the Torah. He keeps the grudge against his fellow Jew. He now becomes the cause of even more pitfalls and more damage that will happen to his life. Meaning, this guy said some Lashon Hara about you and publicized that you are a pedophile, publicized that you're a terrible person, publicized that you're a thief, publicized that you're whatever you are. Okay? Now, surely he's going to get punished by Hashem. Surely he needs to say, I'm sorry. But you, regardless of whether he says I'm sorry or not allowed to have any grudge against him or take revenge against him in any way, shape, or form, because it's all your fault for your sins that you've done. Which means that if you still keep a grudge against this person, you say, I hate this guy, guess what? You are now bringing even more bad to your life because you're now making even more sins. You already made enough sins to bring the current embarrassment to your life. Now you're making even more sins to bring even worse things to you. And that's what the Chinuch says. You now become the cause of extensive pitfalls to yourself because of the further sin. And instead of doing tshuva, the guy is hating people. And that's why mitzvah number 242 says, Lo tikom velo titor et bnei amecha. You shall not bear a grudge against members of your people. That we're commanded not to bear a grudge. We're prohibited against bearing a harboring in our hearts wrong that other Jews, fellow Jews have done to us. Again, remember, always observant Jews. If they're not observant, none of this stuff relates to them, unfortunately, because they're excluding themselves from the nation. Now, all of this comes from the teachings that we talked about, loving your fellow Jew. Mitzvah number 243 in the Chinuch says, is an obligation to love each and every fellow Jew with the love that one has for himself. That's to say that we must be concerned for every single Jew and their property. You should care about his house, his well-being, as much as you care about your house. Very, very difficult mitzvah because most people are selfish. Point being is that there's certain rules of thumb. Don't do things that you don't want people to do to you. Very simple, very logical. Now Rabbi Akiva says, you shall love your fellow Jew as yourself. This is a great principle in the Torah. Comes originally from Hillel. What is that to say? What does that mean, that the entire Torah is just love everybody? No. Says the Chinuch, and this is the real meaning. That's why the Khatam Sofer brought the rebuke to everybody to say that everybody that's turning the Torah into simply their own tool to fix their own life and make their community lovey-dovey, even though half the people don't keep anything, the other half are not even sure of everything, but they're all friendly. That's not loving Am Yisrael. That's not loving each other. That's not loving. That's not the Torah. Even if you're friendly with each other, you help each other out, that's not loving each other. If you loved each other, you would worry about each other's eternity. If you're not worried about each other's eternity and you only care about being friends and having dinners together, that's loving yourself. So what does it mean to love Am Yisrael, love each other? It's a big principle in the Torah. That's to say, says the Sefer Chinuch, that many of the mitzvot in the Torah, hence the ones we just spoke about for the last hour, depend on the fulfillment of this very mitzvah of loving each other. Because one who loves his fellow as he loves himself is not going to steal from him, is not going to commit adultery with his wife, is not going to defraud him financially, is not going to hurt him verbally and cause him any type of lashon hara and rechilut and hurt him in any way. He's not going to harm him. Many of the commandments depend upon the fulfillment of this mitzvah of loving your brother. That's what it means, that it's a big klal in the Torah, it's a big principle in the Torah. Not that it's the entire Torah, it's that you cannot not hate your brother if you love him. You cannot hate your brother if you love him. It's not possible to love an him. You cannot keep a grudge if you love him. You understand? So that's the key. If you don't love him, surely you're going to keep a grudge. Surely you're going to do all these other things. So a person needs to know that when you're bringing rebuke, when those Jewish people went to the Beit Din and rebuked their fellow Jew that came from a rape, and he didn't like it, and he went to the Beit Din with them, and the Beit Din of Moshe Rabbeinu said, you are wrong, you're not part of any tribe. And he didn't like it, and he then cursed Hashem. Them killing him, they were fulfilling the justice. But now we have to see a little bit more color from our sages of why is he in the first place. Why did this all happen? Because the Chinuch says, instead of being upset at everybody else for telling you you're not part of the Klal Yisrael because you came from rape, instead of being upset at everybody for taking to the Beit Din and fulfilling the law, instead of being upset for being in a circumstance that you're in, you should reflect on yourself and see, why am I in this situation? Rabotai Yekarim, the Arizal says that the tum'ah of the world, the impurity that came into the world, is in the control of the Sitra Achra that was given in human form, was given to Esav, the nation of Esav. The Arizal says in Shara Gilgulim, Esav, the source of all Tumah, Kadosh Baruch Hu says, Et Esav Saneti, I hate Esav, because he knew the truth. He knew he needed to do tshuva. He knew just as much as Yaakov Avinu, but he still chose to stick to his own desire and his own ego and his own everything. He is now in control of the Tumah. He's in Genom. He's going to be punished and so on and so forth. But it doesn't just end. Esav didn't end with his death. Why? Because he was given a power, the Tumah, the impurity. This is why, Rabotai Karim, in Sefer Sha'ar Gilgulim, the Gate of Reincarnation by the Arizal says Esav reincarnated into Yoshke, Jesus of Nazareth. Why? Just like Esav knew the truth and desecrated it anyway, so did Jesus know the truth that desecrated it anyway. Just like Esav had the opportunity to be one of the greatest people that ever lived, Jesus had the opportunity to be one of the greatest people that ever lived. They both lost that opportunity and both are doomed for eternity. But there still remains a big question. The time period between Esav and Jesus is a huge amount of time. You're talking about something almost like 2,000 years. Hashem waited 2,000 years? No. Comes the Sefer Shefrir Tzedek by Rabbi Raphael Wolfowitz, one of the Rishonim. And he says in the Sefer that just like the Tumah of Paro went into the ocean because it was too much for the world to contain it. It had to go into the Tumah that Paro in Egypt had was 90% of the world's impurity. Such is the Tumah of Christianity. Too much for the world to contain. Had to go into a certain person. Couldn't just be in Never Never Land. Had to go somewhere. It couldn't be such a long period of going from the impurity of Esav, waiting all the way to Yoshke, all the way to Jesus. Had to go somewhere else. Where did it go? It went from Esav to the son of Shulamit in this week's parasha. Esav reincarnated as the son of Shulamit, the blasphemer, who cursed Hashem because he did not like the law, did not like the deen of the Bedin. And just like the blasphemer's mother brought him to the world because of our immodesty and immorality, when he got reincarnated from also a sinful way where the Mary Magdalene, Imach Shema V'zichra, also cheated on her husband and then ended up going with some goy, Joseph, and then said, no, this is a birth, God impregnated me. It was all the nonsense that they say. Mary Magdalene was a prostitute zona. She got pregnant but didn't want to get stoned by everybody. So what did she do? She said it's a immaculate conception nonsense. The reality is, just like Jesus came from a zona, the previous carnation also was a zona, a person that unfortunately did something terrible, and Shulamit did something terrible. And that's why the reincarnation shows that there is justice in the world. There is justice in the world because they both had sinful actions that stemmed from immodesty. You see, Rabotai, a person that focuses on themselves and how the world is wronging them can end up just like the blasphemer and will only bring more damage to their life. Just like the Chinuch says, a person that focuses on themselves need to do tshuva, realizes that all of the suffering they have is because of their own actions, not somebody else's actions. Yeah, but he said it to me. So what? He said it to me. He's just a pawn that Hashem is using to talk to you because you're not Moshe Rabbeinu. He's not going to talk to you face to face. Yeah, but she said it to me and she did it to me and she got me fired. No. Hashem got you fired. He's just using her to do it. When a person understands that all suffering that come to their life is because of their actions, automatically it brings favor, brings their situation to a place of favorness in the eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and automatically things start moving in the right direction. It may not be as quickly as you would like, but admitting that it's your need to do tshuva is the first step of doing tshuva. This, Rabotai, is one of the failures of Esav that did not stop with Esav, but continued with the son of the blasphemer, the son of Shulamit, and continued even further with Jesus of Nazareth when he was rebuked by his rabbi, and instead of apologizing the right way and doing what he was supposed to, now things have to be my way, and that's why it says in the Gemara, Reshaim, even al pnei Gehenom lo osim tshuva. The wicked, even at the gate of Gehenom, do not do tshuva. Why? I have to be right somewhere, they say. You're not right, Habibi. You're wrong again and again and again. Even if it's multiple reincarnations, you'll still remain wrong, and the Torah will stay 100% true. During the last Jewish Ashkafa Shiur, you explained that people who got married by a Rasha Christian missionary are shogeg and anus. With utmost respect to those couples, is it correct to say that they deserve this outcome since there was no protection from Shamayim? Would these people have looked back at their deeds to see if there's something serious that they do tshuva for? So one of the mitzvot that we have is a ve'afta le'recha kamocha, that you must love everybody as much as you love yourself, right? And first of all, you wouldn't want anyone to say, "Hey, listen, you just lost all your money because you probably did something bad," which is what the friends of Job did, and they got rebuked for it. Furthermore, when Penina came, said, taunted Hannah, her sister, or her, the other wife. I'm sorry, the other wife of Elchanan. They were both married to the same man. It was allowed at that time. She would taunt her. "Oh, look at the clothes I bought my baby. When are you going to get something for your baby? Oh, I forgot, you don't have any babies." And that would cause Hannah to cry a lot. And what ended up happening, finally when the salvation came and Hashem opened up the womb of Hannah, brought her Shmuel and then other babies, every single baby she had, the babies of the other wife, died. Literally, baby after baby after baby, 5 babies died, until she realized this all happened because even though she meant well, she meant to cause her anguish in order to get her to cry even more, in order for Hashem to have mercy on her. So she meant for Shemayim. Hashem says to hurt another Jew is playing with fire. To hurt another Jew is playing with fire. And because of that, even though she meant well, she got punished severely. She lost most of her sons, and the last 2, she gave them to Hannah to adopt them. So at least Hashem doesn't kill them too. So to say such a thing is not a good idea, first and foremost. It's not even good to think like that. Last but not least, also you should know, there is a teachings. Amitkabed beklon chavero en lo chelek le'olam haba. Someone that takes honor in the downfall of his friend has no share of the world to come. Why? Because you are obligated not only to love your fellow Jew, you're obligated not to hold a grudge against them, you're obligated not to take revenge against them, you're obligated not to hate them in your heart. All of these things, this type of feeling, comes from a wrong place. To say, you should have done tshuva and bad things wouldn't have happened to you, you don't need to tell him that. You don't need to tell him that. You could already get him to understand it without making him feel bad about the past, by simply telling him, listen, if you do tshuva, B'ezrat Hashem, things will get better. Don't tell him, listen, you lost all your money because you're... It's not going to help him. No one is going to do tshuva because somebody tells him, listen, you lost everything because you're a bad person. Most of the time, they're just going to hate you, even if they know what you're saying is true. So it's important to know, to be very careful with people's hearts. Be very, very careful with people's hearts. Be very, very careful with people's bodies. Rav Ovadia alav shalom, he saw Rav Elbaz. Rav Elbaz, He used to be also a moel. He did Brit Milah for thousands of children. And one time he saw him about to do Brit Milah. He says, Kvod Harav, please, before, go like this. Go like this. Kvod Harav, I washed my hands already. Rabbi says to him, Kvod Harav, I already washed my hands. I did Netilah already. He goes, no. Go like this. Go like this. Warm your hands up. He says, why, Kvod Harav? Why? He says, K'zgula. He goes, no. It's cold outside. It's cold outside. You just came inside. You're going to take the baby's diaper off. You're going to touch his legs. And the baby's going to suffer a little unnecessarily because your hands are cold. So, warm up your hands. That's what a Gadol Adol is. What's a Gadol Adol? Why? He knows everything? A lot of people know a lot of things. What's a Gadol Adol? He cares about everything. Everything. Why? He notices that maybe the baby will feel the cold hands. Even the parents don't think like that. The baby's going to feel the cold hands of the Moel on the Brit Milah. He's about to cut off a piece of his body. No. Dad, that's from Hashem. We need that. But the hands, that's from you. Why does he have to feel your cold hands? Same thing is with sometimes there's certain people that they hire a Moel. A Moel that's like a Mekubal. So when he's doing the Brit Milah, he does all types of kavanot. Some of the big rabbis, Rabbi Ephraim told me himself, they're very much against that. Why? Because this kavanot that they do, although there is a significance to doing kavanot and Kabbalah and so on, says if they don't know how to do it quickly, it causes extra suffering for the baby, because while the baby is sitting there and you're holding him in a certain way and it's causing him pain, you're doing kavanot, kol hakavod. But why? What is the baby at fault for you taking a long time? That's inconsiderate. So a person needs to know. To be a good Jew, it's not just about keeping Shabbat myself, learning Torah myself, no. It's also caring and loving another Jew as much as I love myself. I care about if he feels cold. I care about if he has food for Shabbos. I care about whether he has a job. I care about if he has a shidduch. Everything I care about. Yeah, but I don't even like the guy. You don't need to like the guy. You need to love the guy. Yeah, but he wasn't nice to me. So what? He's not nice to you because you made a sin. That's why he's not nice to you. If you are a tzaddik, they'll be nice to you. And that's the reality. That alvai we could all get to. Alvai we could all get to such a thing. We're understanding that everything that's in our world is due to our deeds. This, Rabotai, I believe, is a little bit of insight about a lot of things that I think could, Bezat Hashem, if not give you chizuk, at least to give me some. So, at least one of us benefit. But I think that from some of the comments that I'm seeing, it looks like we're getting some good feedback, Baruch Hashem. Bezat Hashem, we'll continue learning more and more to continue serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu better and better. And Bezat Hashem, sanctify His name. Bezat Hashem, learn His Torah, adhere to His Torah, publicize His Torah, sanctify His name, and get all of Am Yisrael and the righteous Noahides in the four corners of the world to do the same and even more. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen ve'amen.
Seven years of lectures. Seven months of film editing. Countless hours of study by two rabbis. Information we received over 3,000 years ago. All for this moment. Tikkun HaBRIT. The movie.
There's a small member in your body. It shouldn't take over your whole life. If you satiate it, You're never going to have enough.
The Sofer clan, when it gets a hold of something, it does not let go.
Time for us to rectify what we have done.
Normal numbers should be somewhere around 20 million or higher.
You're never going to have control of it. If you start it, and only feed it when it's permissible according to the Torah.
Pornography is as addictive as crack cocaine.
You're always going to be happy, including this world and the next. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen.